my name's Ashe. I'm a music recording and touring artist. I've not had to introduce myself in a long time. Yeah, and I wrote this record called Moral of the Story, which was featured in the movie To All the Boys I Loved, P.S. I Still Love You, and it has completely changed my life.
Yes, and we will get into that. All right, so before we sort of dive deep into the film and the music behind it, I want to first focus on sort of the different careers you all sit in and the pathways and how you got there. And so, Lindsay, let's start with you. 19 years ago, right? You
aged myself.
you started your career and you figured out music supervision was sort of the road for you. What was the moment that you figured that music supervision was an actual job and that it was something that you were interested in?
Yeah, I was a huge fan of the show Felicity, which was on the WB. And it kind of dawned on me that they used songs that I had never heard of. And I was discovering music through the show. And it basically dawned on me at the end of my senior year of college, like, hey, I bet that's someone's job. And then I went to the movies and I think I stayed for the credits and I literally saw the title Music Supervisor. And I said, I bet that's what it's called. And I ended up, that was 2001. So a lot of people, I was trying to like network and connect and people were like, what? Music supervision wasn't a term that people really knew.
Yeah.
So I ended up, I also did a cappella in college and I ended up having coffee with an alum from my group who happened to be a studio exec at Disney.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, so what does that mean? What do you do? And he was like, well, I oversee shows like Alias and Felicity. And I was like, like, that is my dream show. And he was like, I know the women who do it. Your best bet is to start as an unpaid intern. I'm happy to send your resume over.
Awesome.
And I was like, and he says in retrospect, that conversation, I knew exactly what I wanted to do and he knew exactly how to help me. So, and then it was right time, right place because the supervisors who did it had 4 shows on their plate and had some paperwork building up. So I just came in and started, churning out paperwork, helping them do confirmation letters, and ended up, getting hired the following week.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many, like, in that story, so many bits of advice that you're giving out to our audience, right? Not only did you sort of find what you were interested in, but then you did some research or some educated guess even to figure out what is that job and how can I make that a career? And then you network and were able to advocate for yourself and say, this is something I want to do, and right time, right place, we're able to make it happen. And Laura, you and I talked about sort of your introduction into music supervision. I want you to share that for our audience.
Yeah, I didn't know it was a job. I knew I wanted to do something in film, and that's even how I got out to Los Angeles, is I knew I wanted to go to school out here and do something in film. I mean, for my knowledge, like, I never grew up making movies or anything, but I knew, like, it was a director and an actor, and I knew I didn't want to act. Like, I am way too self-conscious for that. But I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. So I applied. I got into USC and I applied to the film school. I did not get in. But I also got to you could still take mini classes, and I did a lot of internships and tried to see, like, let me just be a sponge and soak up everything. And I actually interned at a talent agency, and it was pretty fun. I mean, as being, 19 years old, like, and a lot of people said, well, that's a really great place to start because it's sort of like your master's program. And I worked at several different agencies and they offered me a job out of college. So that was amazing. And I worked in like management and a talent agency for actors for about 4 years. But I knew after it was brutal. Every Hollywood story is true. I had like terrible bosses that would scream about their food being wrong. And, it was one client who shall remain nameless, but all the stories are true. And I just couldn't take being yelled at on a weekend for like certain bars, not, like the certain nutrition bars not being on their G4. I was like, that cannot be my life. Like, I'm not. Yeah. And so I started doing and when I was at this one company, they also represented musicians. And I've always loved music. Like, music's always been my passion. I always made mixtapes for people, and I dated myself on that too. But that was always the request, that everybody always wanted my mixtapes. And so people, when enough people say something to you, I think is the advice of like, listen, because so many people kept telling me, you should work in music. And I said, well, but I love film. So it was that struggle of, but I didn't. And then once I found out that you could combine both, was everything. And I started asking around, because I'd been making some good contacts, and like, do you know anybody that does this? What can I find out? And I went on a few informational meetings, and it was more just informational. But I just was like, okay, I'm going to be determined. I'm going to figure it out. And there was, I don't know if it still exists anymore, but there was the UTA job list, and there was an opening.
It still exists.
Okay. I didn't know, but there was an opening for a music supervisor. It didn't say who, but the two directors, and Anton's worked with one, which I'm like, oh my goodness. But the two directors that I've loved how they use music was Danny Boyle and Baz Luhrmann. And that's like, Trainspotting soundtrack for me is why I do what I do. And turns out one of the supervisors I worked with Baz Luhrmann. So like, even when I went on the interview, all those posters were up, and that was super cool. And they actually hired me, and I got to work with two really great supervisors who really took me under their wing and really taught me a lot. But I think, having the Hollywood industry experience made me a really good, tough assistant, because I developed a really tough skin from being yelled at. And then it was sort of like, as soon as I got there, I just was a further sponge and soaked it up. And like, I knew that was where I needed to be. So.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? I feel like when we talk about internships and even entry-level jobs, you never know even if that's not the job for you, you never know how that experience and those skills that you learn, you can be able to place them in, or use them further on down the road. Also, there's this thing within the music industry where I think majority of entertainment industry, right, there's always these 6 degrees of separations. You don't know who someone else knows. And so just being always to advocate for yourself is important. Anton, you are on the label side of things, right? You are under the Capitol Records umbrella. How did you find yourself under Capitol Records?
Well, it's funny. It's probably, I think when I took this job, I felt like things had maybe kind of come full circle for me in a way, because when I first started in the business, I started as an assistant to Baz Luhrmann on the film of Romeo and Juliet. And despite the sort of success that film has had, at the time we were making it, it was a very small production with a very small core team. Mm-hmm. And as an assistant, Baz also tasked me with a lot of other duties, research, obviously making cups of tea, that's a big part of the job, and music. And music really kind of developed organically, and I think I learned a lot from him. And in the process of working on that project, I received a lot of mentorship from a person named Karen Rackman, who was the head of soundtracks at Capitol Records at that time. And so although I went on to do 4 films where I worked with Baz on the music, and then went and worked at 20th Century Fox as an in-house music supervisor, when this position came up at Capitol, it felt like it's sort of, I think I'd always hoped that one day I might get to do this job, because I think to walk in the footsteps of somebody who teaches you a lot and who mentors you it's a very fulfilling place to be at this, certainly for me at this point in my career. But as I think you and I have spoken about this, the job of film music and the job of applying music to storytelling and finding that synthesis and that nexus point at which a great piece of music helps to amplify the unspoken emotions of a scene. That's something that once you get a taste for it and you start to learn what's a good song or what's a good piece of score or what's a good piece of instrumental music, whatever that is, when you get into the business of finding those combinations that work, it's, I don't want to liken it to a drug, but it's very addictive. So I'm lucky to be able to express that from a different angle here at the record label.
Yeah, Yes, and thank you for focusing on the piece about mentorship, right? It's something that's very not easy to come by, but when you are able to identify someone who has shared a similar pathway as you do, it's really important to sort of pick their brain and glean a lot of knowledge from them. Ashe, as an artist, talk to us about when did that start? Like, talk about your background and when you knew that being an artist and being a singer-songwriter is something that you knew was something for you.
Well, I mean, every time I get this question, I feel like so many people expected that story about I walked into the street and then a car almost hit me and then I realized I was going to be a music artist, you know? And I feel like for me, it was just a much more slow, like incremental, led me up to this point sort of a thing, which is maybe more of a human story. I did not know what I wanted to do with my life. When I graduated high school, I did not know who the heck I was, or, I didn't have a unique voice yet, which was a combination of insecurities and immaturity. And, I look at people like Billie Eilish and go, wow, like that's incredible that you figured out your voice so young. It took me a long time. I needed time. I went to Berklee College of Music for school in Boston, Massachusetts. I think I saw someone in the chat say something about being in Boston. So hi. And yeah, it was Berklee School of Growing Up for me, and learned a lot about myself there. But I mean, I could go on for a long time, but I basically graduated still not really knowing what I wanted to do. I moved to Nashville, thinking that I was going to be a songwriter only. I felt like I had the confidence that I could write a damn good song, but I did not feel confident enough to sing it myself. And then eventually I grew up and stopped being so darn immature, and I was like, these are my records, you know?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I started both with writing for other people. My first songwriting cut was a song for Demi Lovato, a song called "You Don't Do It For Me Anymore."
Oh, okay.
Okay. Now DeMarco likes you. No, just kidding.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I'm a Debbie fan. We'll talk later.
Call me. Yeah, I love her so much. What a powerhouse. And yeah, so started writing for other people, but really the focus became, there was some sort of shift.
Yeah.
In my own brain, and I knew that I needed to. It was a better decision for me to write for myself.
Yeah.
And it's like, as soon as I made that decision, the universe, I don't know if any of you guys can like vouch for this or feel the same way, but as soon as you like click into your groove,
all the pieces fall together.
The universe is like, yep, we've been waiting for that.
Yeah.
Like, that's what we've been waiting for you to do. We're like, oh, a music supervisor. That's what, okay, I'm going to do that. And then the universe is like, yep, we were waiting for you to figure it out.
Yeah.
So, yeah, sorry, that was long-winded.
No, thank you. I appreciate you all sharing sort of how you've gotten to where you are. And I think it's important for our audience to be able to hear those stories, because what we know in the music industry is that there isn't one linear pathway to the different jobs. So it's always interesting for them to hear the different perspectives. I want to shift sort of what brings us all here today, which is the music behind the 2018 Netflix film, To All the Boys I've Loved. Before, sorry. I want to start with Laura, and I want to start with sort of how this came about, right? I think when we talk about music supervision, what happens first? Is it you get a script and then you place the music, you have a music and then you place it to the script? Talk to us about that process.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little different each time too. On the first film, the film was shot, and then we actually were tasked with replacing a lot of the stuff that was in there, and it was like ready, set, go. And that's sort of how Lindsay and I teamed up, because we both are independent supervisors and we have collaborated. And so for the first film, it was find a sonic template that worked, for this world. And immediately we watched the film and really liked it. We just had no idea how much everybody else would like it. Yeah. We thought it's great, but we always like a lot of the stuff we work on. So it was sort of that. So on the second film, we were brought on with the script. And it was sort of within the first, which Lindsay can talk about more, within the first like week, we were doing all the on-camera acapellas and finding those acapella singers, figuring out what song that they would, both moments would sing, getting it cleared. Did it make sense story-wise? We were even figuring out their costumes, like what the acapella groups would wear. And it was ready, set, go. And then, which we can go into more, but one of the earlier moments of finding music, because when you read the script, you see if there are on-camera moments, and those become a priority. And another one, which was we thought would be a big moment in the movie, was that Laura Jean turns to the camera and lip syncs a heartbreaking breakup song, and that's where Ashe's song came in. And so that was one of the earliest songs we picked for the movie too, and we went with it.
So what you're sort of sharing through in your response is that it's more than just sort of finding a song and placing it to a script. There's once you get a script, you have to find all of the moments where music is being played. And then you talked about even being a part of the wardrobe and being on set with the actual film. And Lindsay, I'm wondering if you can sort of continue to elaborate on that point as well.
Yeah, well, Laura and I both, like, the job is half creative and half business. And a lot of your responsibilities are making sure that your project doesn't violate copyright law. So if someone's quoting a lyric on camera, if someone has to sing on camera, if someone's going to lip sync on camera, and maybe even perform a dance routine. That's happened on other projects where, like, okay, we need a group to choreograph a dance to a song. Like, what's the song we're going to use? Anything that's involved in the filming process needs to be cleared before it's filmed. So you need approvals. You need to make sure you can be able to, oh my gosh, I totally lost my train of thought. But basically, you need to have approval to use a song. If you want to change a lyric, you even need approval for that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, we're involved really early on, because if something's going to be shot that's musical, we have to be involved. And with the acapella thing, it was even, we are not casting, but like the extras casting person, we worked with them to make sure, because they wanted the group to sing on camera instead of pre-recording a song and lip syncing to it on camera. So you wanted to make sure that, like, we actually had a group that could pull this off. And like one of the first groups they like pitched to us were singing along to a piano, and like one of the easiest songs you could ever sing to, I was like, that's not who we want to go with.
Yeah, and Lindsay's acapella experience really paid off there, because she knew how groups are, who's who and what in the group, and that's an easy song, and like in competition, if they sang that, okay, I defer to you on that.
Yes, thanks for tying that in.
Yeah. But so that and then when we do play songs, we're always looking for moments where we can play music in post-production. But you have a lot more time to fiddle with that. You can try a bunch of songs to picture, and then obviously if it's going to get used, you need to get permission to use it and all that.
Yeah. So we talked about sort of what music supervision is and sort of how you all were brought into it with production and then director and producers, right? And then we have Anton, who is along with Capitol and the label side of it. Lindsay, share with us sort of the need or the want to bring in Anton into the situation.
Well, I think we saw the music from the first film saw a huge reaction. And again, that was a project we were finished with in January, and it came out in August of 2018. And even like the artists who we paid and licensed were like, oh, right, that movie came out. And some of them saw, like Anna of the North saw crazy streams. The fans responded really strongly to the music in the first film. And even in that moment, it was like, oh, bummer, like wish we had a soundtrack for this. But so when film 2 came along, it's like, we should be doing a soundtrack for this. And our executive producer at Ace Films also was interested in doing a soundtrack because he wanted another, he wanted a partner to help market the film. And Laura and I think, wanted a souvenir for the fans that, like, you can leave the movie and go listen to, the Spotify playlist or CD or coming up vinyl, and like think back to all your favorite moments in the film. So, early on, Anton and Brian Nolan, who works with him at Capitol Records, like called Laura and were like, this movie is awesome, we want to work with you. And that was really important to us because we wanted people who cared about the film to be involved. We didn't want to just be forcing in, label priorities into a film. We really wanted a partner, and we wanted someone who understood that if, like, the Ashe song is a perfect example, like if, it's in one of the most important moments of the film and our lead actress, who everybody like the audience cares about, sings it into the camera, people are going to respond to that song. So that's the kind of partner we wanted, someone who understood that as well.
Anton, talk to us a little bit about your role in this film and putting the music behind this film together.
Well, I think certainly what we were drawn to was just, I think the default setting for a lot of films, a lot of TV series, the default setting for how you use music is it sits somewhere in the region of wallpaper or drapery. It's like it's in the background. It has a place, but it's not being forced out front to help tell the story. And so I think if you're attuned to this, when we saw the first To All the Boys film, we just responded to the fact that there was a highly sophisticated and developed musical palette, and music was being used front and center in the storytelling in a way that, going back a generation, you saw that in all of John Hughes's films. Fantastic use of music. And I think that's something when, if you grew up on those films and you see people using music in a very confident and out front way, that's what we responded to. And I think what we felt was it's a trilogy of films. And if we can come on and partner on films 2 and 3, hopefully what we can bring to the table is just more firepower to realizing the musical ambitions of the films. I think we, as a label, we certainly have a primary responsibility to our artists, but at the same time, if you're partnering on a soundtrack, we can try and push music in there, but ultimately, I think the film itself will reflect back to you what it needs and what's a good idea and what's a bad idea. And I think this is collaborative in nature, and I think the collaboration is a very enjoyable one because on these films, because Lindsay and Laura set up such a secure and confident musical palette in the first film, I feel like in films 2 and 3, we kind of intuitively all have a shared sort of language for where we're going and for what's maybe a fit, and certainly for what's not a fit. And that's an enjoyable way to move forward through the process.
Yeah. And then I think something you were also sharing too is that just because sort of you're partnering with Capitol, it's not sort of set in stone that you're going to only use the Capitol catalog to provide music for this film. And you were talking more so about like it just has to fit. And I think that's something that everyone should know as an audience member here. We've got a ton of questions from the audience, and so I want to get to some of those. But before that, Ashe, I want to bring you into this conversation and talk about sort of what you wrote this song. Did you write it specifically for this film, or was the song written before the film and then it was asked to be a part of it?
Yeah, the record Moral of the Story, which was used in that lip singing moment, lip sung
Yeah.
moment in the movie. It was already written. It's a song about my life. It's about my divorce. And so I was very much out in the world. I think I want to say it was out for maybe a month or two before Lindsay and Laura got their ears on it, and reached out. Yeah, it was out.
Yeah, we were talking earlier a little bit about this, but you mentioned that this song is something that you wrote and it's so personal to you, and it's about your divorce. And so, walk me through sort of your mind and your thoughts when being asked to place it into a film, a song so personal to you that was written about your divorce, and sort of giving it to this other entity. How did that make you feel, and what was going through your mind?
Oh, I love this question so much. I mean, honestly, the moment you put a song out into the world, you go through this experience. I can only imagine what a parent feels like when they send their child off. Like, they've raised it up well, and then they send it to college or something. It's a lot like giving birth and then going, okay, the world, it's not my baby anymore. Mm-hmm. It's not just my baby anymore, you know? Mm-hmm. Because people adopt songs and they play it as the first song they dance to at their wedding. Right. You know, that song's story is not my story anymore, you know? And so when they hear that record, they think of that time they were driving in the car and, you know, they got a call from their mom that this thing happened. And, you know, music takes on new life with each human that it touches. And so I very much so, I feel like I've understood this. There's mm-hmm. still the like, this is mine, you know? Right. And you'll never understand the way I understand this song because I wrote it and it's my baby. But no, I mean, it was used in the movie it was a high schooler's breakup, you mm-hmm. know? Which was devastating, and everyone cried with Laura Jean when, you know, she broke up with them, or they broke up. But that's a very different story than the story I had with the song, you know? Right. So, it was nothing but cool. It was a really great experience.
You bring up an interesting point, right? The fact that you've birthed this child and it now belongs to you and the world. And so for ears, everyone listening to it, it's their own interpretation of how it makes them feel and what experiences it relates to them. And I think as we talk about getting music placed in TV and films of games or whatever it might be, that's something to note as an artist. And I know we've got a lot of artists on the call today. Laura, something I want to ask you along with that is that a lot of the questions we're getting in the Q&A are all about where are you and Lindsay looking for new music at? If I'm an artist, where should I be placing my music so that it's getting heard by music supervisors?
I mean, yeah, we look in all different avenues, and that's the thing, is a good song is a good song. So it's kind of democratic, hopefully, in that way. But I mean, from doing this, we have some people that we deal with more, or we know they know the drill of like, okay, we need this approved very quickly. And so, you know, there's just some companies that, I'm trying to think how to word that, but so basically it's like music publishers, labels, mm-hmm. managers. Sometimes it's like, if we know like this project, we might reach out to some companies that maybe do this sound like that we've developed for better as opposed to other companies. But really getting your music with pitching companies is really recommended, because I definitely am open and always willing, and I listen to a lot of stuff just because I feel like there is so much coming from everywhere, and you know, like even on the internet and YouTube, like wormholes that I'll start, or you know, someone on Twitter, there's always that. But it does help for somebody to be rep by a sync company, because they'll know about samples and just some of the finer detail points of the intricacies of music licensing, which you just might not be up on that yet. Right. So that's really the best way. It's not to say it's the only way. It's just, and there are a lot out there, and kind of like see if your like the style that you have fits at that company. Right. You know, there are some people that specialize in hip hop. There's some people that specialize in country. And then sometimes some companies want a diverse roster. So it's but but I do think that's a really great place to start.
Right. So sorry.
Oh no, and I just said it's not the only way.
Okay.
You know, but there are gatekeepers and
yeah. And it's good to know the players in the game. Something we talked about last week was I'm always so curious because of the genres. And Lindsay, for you, how do you separate sort of this song is good to me because I like pop music versus this song is good for the film and TV? Like, I know being someone who likes a specific genre, like it'll be very hard for me to place music into TV and film because I just stick to the pop and that's all I got.
I mean, you know, kind of like what we've been talking with To All the Boys, like you let the project lead the way. And you know, I always say that like the first season of a show is usually the hardest because you're establishing your sound. So you're going from 0 to whatever direction. So sometimes you try a lot of different directions until you find the lane that fits your series. And that goes for the composer as well. That's a big challenge for them too. So I like my iTunes, and yes, I still use iTunes. I feel like a year from now, I'm going to be underground with the dinosaurs in my iTunes. But anyway, I have folders per show, and I have like an emotional folder, and I have an upbeat folder and a warm folder. And, you know, for Virgin River, that's going to be much more acoustic based. You know, they love singer-songwriters or singer-songwriters with a little electronic influence. And when I worked on Shadowhunters, it was like, we're not in this world, so we don't want to hear like real instruments. We want everything to be produced and electronic based. So it's kind of fun because it stretches your brains in different directions. And then I rarely work on a show that uses like radio hits, but I love listening to the radio. And for me, actually listening to the radio is like like vacation because I'm not listening to all the stuff I'm listening to for work. Now, Ashe is the exception to this rule.
I have to speak up to that because I love that you said that because you are the reason why Moral of the Story had its shot to get on radio. The point is, I mean, of artists who are trying to actively make it in this world, who are busting their butts every day just to get their music heard. You know, I so much more respect music. I don't want to hear a pop radio hit in, you know, and if it's in To All the Boys I Love 3, I'll allow it. but at the end of the day, those artists and those records have got their shine, you know, and they've had their moment. They've already, anyway, sorry. I monopolized your thing, but I just want to say I respect that so much, and I think it's important that you're not playing those records.
I appreciate that. I know, like, Laura and I, like, the whole first film, the only artist you had heard of, well, not heard of, but the only, like, popular song and major label song in the first film was Tears for Fears, and that was specifically because we needed an 80s song that was in a scene where like it referenced that the mom had listened to it. And so I'm happy you feel that way because that's how Laura and I feel like, and it's interesting, like I worked in radio, but all my favorite songs would be like Dido and Ben Lee and Beth Thornton, like we spun them once a week. And so I feel like this world is perfect for me because those artists thrive in sync. Whereas they aren't necessarily, you know, Dido became huge, but they aren't necessarily the song everybody's hearing on the radio.
Right. A question that just came to my mind is, Anton, for you, how, being the VP of soundtracks and under a label, sort of how do you find these gems of music and really giving, and also give your artists sort of a fighting chance when it comes to placement in these different opportunities?
I mean, I think you got to get to know your artists and also where they are at in their own journey as artists and as songwriters, and you know, I think some artists have a particular affinity for storytelling. They do it naturally in their songs and in their music, and some of our artists, as I'm discovering, are fantastic at writing a song for a scene, and they can watch a scene and go, oh, I totally get what that needs. and they come back with fantastic ideas and great options. But I don't think that's, you know, I wouldn't say it's for every artist, because I think everybody's on a different journey, and you know, in my position, I have to be very respectful of that. While at the same time, I think we're always looking for this thing where you go, you want to create. I don't know if synthesis is the right word. I think it probably approximates the right word. Where you go, oh, that's an unexpected song from this artist who I know better for doing this kind of music, and guess what? They're doing a duet for this, and we're going to put it in the film. That to me is like the dream scenario, because you're expanding the world in which an artist can express themselves.
Yeah, and another question that came up in our Q&A is for those who are creating the actual content, right? How do they go about getting the music rights clear? What does that process actually look like?
Wait, so from our perspective?
Yeah, from your perspective, but also from the artist's perspective too. Like if I'm the one creating a YouTube video and I want to place Ashe's song in the video, how do I get those rights cleared?
So interestingly, I think on YouTube, like if you're, for lack of a better, if you're like user X on YouTube, you are generally allowed to use songs, and then the artist or publisher, and Ashe, you can correct me, and anyone correct me, but they can decide to allow you to use it and just monetize on your video if it becomes something that starts making money. Like when Gangnam Style went everywhere, the labels were like, sure, keep making these videos, we'll keep monetizing on your videos. But then there are like other, like I believe Sia Breathe Me gets pulled down anytime it goes on YouTube because she doesn't want to do that. Like I think if you searched it, you would not find it. I'm like, does anyone want to do that right now? But or, you know, interestingly, I did Awesomeness, who brought Laura and me into the To All the Boys franchise, was a YouTube channel, and I worked for them a ton. And because they were a premium content channel, they were making like really good content for YouTube and making money off of it. Like they were the ones making money off of the videos. We had to license those songs. Right. So, you know, for YouTube, you're looking at internet rights. So anytime you clear something, you're looking at what kind of media are you clearing it for? Is it internet? Is it TV only? Most shows and programs are all media excluding theatrical now. Obviously theatrical means it would be in a theater, so bigger films get all the rights. But like, you know, if you, so anyway, the YouTube of it all depends on how big your video becomes. But if you want to do it the right way, you would go to basically every song, someone wrote it and someone sings it. And sometimes that's the same person. You need to go to both parties, and you need to get 100% of the publishing and 100% of the master to say, yes, you can use my song for whatever terms you agree to. That could be zero. That could be $250. It could be $1,000. It could be $20,000. Yeah. So there are a lot of questions. The other things that goes into, do you need it for the US only? Do you need it for the world? Do you need it for 3 months? Do you need it forever? Right. And those kind of things will dictate cost usually.
Yeah.
And all the writers, like all the writers, make sure you get every writer on the song. When I was saying before about like sometimes people sample and they don't even know that they did. I mean, hopefully you do, but some people might not. But all those things, because then the rights holder of that sample, for example, could come after you in your student film for not clearing the sample. So that's why you kind of want music that doesn't use it, or you need to know that up front so that you have the time and money to also clear those portions too.
Yeah. A question that we got from Austin Howard in our Q&A was around how can they demonstrate their understanding for for different genres when looking at internships or jobs within music supervision. How do you demonstrate sort of your knowledge to be able to place music into film and TV? And we'll start with Lindsay.
I mean, creative is the hardest thing to judge somebody on, because it's subjective, right? So normally it feels like I don't know, what do we say? You can learn paperwork, but it's hard to learn if you have an ear. I mean, one thing I've done, like when I've hired people, is like make me a playlist, and or if I have an intern, like for me, it's just good to know what's out there. I don't, because we need MP3s to actually edit into our shows, I don't hang out on Spotify a lot, but I know everybody else does. So like, I'm really into if an intern wants to make me a mix off of Spotify and show me different stuff. You know, I also think it's a good exercise for them to say, you know, for me to say, okay, this is what we use on Virgin River. Make me a mix of songs you think would be good for that sounding show. You know, but I also think like a great song is a great song. So I want to be aware of it, even if it's hip hop and I'm not working on a show that uses any hip hop, because also sometimes what some people consider hip hop is actually kind of like a pop song, and maybe we could use that, or, you know, we get asked for, we're looking for like a flamenco pop, current, really modern sounding song right now. And it's what, like Despacito Part 2? I don't know if that exists. But we never expected to get asked to look for a song like that. You know what I mean? And we still don't know. We won't know if we like it until we hear it. So,
and watching it to picture, you can kind of, I mean, you know, maybe like somebody to practice can just watch things on mute, or like strip out the songs and try to just throw it up and see. Because there's just a gut feeling, like, I mean, it's never our final say. It's always the director, the producers, the studio that also weigh in. So it's not just always what our taste is. It's how to navigate that and kind of be the translator and find like, oh, okay, this you're bumping on the beeps in this song. Okay, so no songs with beeps. Okay, but this person wants a lyric about, you know, New York or something. So it's how to like call all that and channel it in. You know, so it's not always your decision, but I guess, and really, I think for me, I like when people have clear opinions about what they like and why. So there's a really great website called TuneFind where that lists all the songs used in film and TV projects. And I want to hear about like, okay, well, why did you like that use? What was it? You know? And I think someone that really has dug deep and learned all that is a good asset and a good way to kind of educate yourself on trends, or like, wow, you know, there was a while the Kaleo way down, that song was used everywhere. I used it too. But, you know, it's sort of like, what are those trends? And like, yeah.
Cool. And so, I mean, you all bring some really valid points that sort of are transitioning us to our next part of our session, which is really about a lot of the questions in our Q&A, and Anton, we'll start with you, are about sort of what are the skill sets that make you proficient in your roles? And so, Anton, I want to hear from you. So what are the 1 to 2 skills that you know that you possess that make you really successful in your current job?
Well, I think film or television, you have to have a good understanding of how story works. And I think that's something you can't overlook if you want to delve into this field, is that ultimately we all have to serve the needs of the story that's being told. And that's a great thing, because that can actually help. It can help you shake off your own taste, or the limitations of your own sort of subjective feelings about stuff, because you want to get into the world of the story and the headspace of the story. So I would say somewhere between that and also being a musical omnivore, I think is something that's very helpful to me. I have eclectic tastes and eclectic listening habits, and that's great. And then the third thing is I'm pretty good at drawing up an Excel grid. That is a very handy skill to have in your life, and it took me a long time to realize that being able to organize creative ideas and manage them in a way that you can communicate with others, that's a skill that you have to learn and you have to become very good at, because it's all well and good to have lots of ideas, but if you can't communicate them clearly with others in a way that is persuasive and concise, then your chance of those ideas thriving is diminished.
Muted. Thank you for sharing that.
Excellent handwriting too.
Yes. Good
He
to
has very
know.
nice, clear spreadsheets.
Yes. Ashe, our audience wants to know the music and sync companies that are a part of your team that helped you get this song placed.
Yeah, absolutely. Funny enough, my main sync company is a company called Zinc, ZYNC, and my management helped me find them, and we had a couple meetings with them, and I loved the people at the company, and that's sort of what I always go with whenever I'm signing a record deal, publishing deal, your sync company, finding your attorney, everyone on your team. You gotta you're gonna be working with them a lot, so you better like them.
Yeah.
So I love the human beings at Zinc. So they're my main company, and then my publishing company that I'm signed with is Cobalt, and they have a sync team as well. So it's sort of like we all come together and fight for the music.
Yes. Yes, thank you for sharing that. We've got another question from our audience, and it comes from actually one of our Music Florida alumna, Jamoye, who's asked, Lindsay, to you, have you ever thought a song was perfect for a scene and you had to compromise because of a difference of opinion from the director or even the songwriter?
Yeah, like every show. Well, even I actually almost mentioned this earlier. There are songs that were like, this song is so To All the Boys, but there's just not the right scene for it.
Right.
There are only a certain amount of scenes in it, and the song has to serve a purpose within that scene. Actually, I'm trying to think of it. Anyway, there's some song. Oh, there's a song, and it's an artist named Penelope who's on Capitol. And the lyric is, can we just press pause? And she wrote it finishing college. And in our upcoming movie, they're finishing high school. And I'm like, it would be so great. And there's even a moment where there's a line of dialogue where someone mentions pausing, but there's no need for a song there. And there's no other song, there's no other place that actually needs that sound or the song for any reason. But I'm going to tell you I love the song. I don't think it's released, but also because it's unreleased, it would also be really cool to put something new on our soundtrack. That's something we always try to do, is try to give put tracks on there that have never been out in the world before. So yeah, that happens all the time. I actually, on One Tree Hill, we used a song by Boston, which is an 80s song, and the production on it sounded so 80s. I thought it was really weird over what we were seeing, which was 3 19-year-olds jumping into a pool. And I said to my showrunner, I said, I don't think this matches our audience, and I personally don't like it. No offense, I don't like it in the scene. And he said, I just love it. I just really want to use it. And it's his show, so that was his call. So yeah, that happens a lot.
Yeah, we're there to tell their story, and sometimes they just have things that they really feel very strongly about, and it's the time to be diplomatic and I mean, if you have a safe environment and where you feel like you can speak your voice, you can say hey, I don't really love that, but that's my opinion. But some people you work with just don't want to hear it either, and they just want what they want, and that's okay too. It just depends when they want to lean into that we are listening to so much and that we have so much coming before they're not aware, lean into us, but it's okay if not too. So it always depends. But
I just have to mention, I had temped Gnarls Barkley crazy into an episode before, right before it blew up. And I had a producer who was like, what is this crazy disco stuff? And I was like, this is really cool, but okay, moving on. And then of course it won the Grammy, and
Yeah.
and he was like, you knew it, I was wrong, like, and that it was very nice of him to acknowledge that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to pivot our conversation a little bit before we end, because we're coming up on the end. I told you all that's going to go super fast. But there's so much going on in our world today, and I just want to talk about how it's all really affecting the work that you are doing. Specifically focusing on what's going on with the pandemic, and then also focusing on what's happening, the sort of systemic racism that's happening with the Black community and all over the world. And so starting with COVID, like how, Laura and Lindsay, you are creating music for TV and film that has been shut down in the pandemic. So talk to us more about how that's affected your jobs, and when do you plan to see sort of you getting back into work and being able to play songs into TV and film?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely other than we're working on the third To All the Boys, but that was filmed before.
Film last summer.
Yeah, it was filmed last summer, so it was before we shut down. So we've been working on that one all along, and so that nothing really changed with that, because we're deep into like post production. Okay. Cool. And our editors on that can work remotely, and we're in a situation for that. Another show I was working on, Siren, we were on the last couple episodes, and so we mixed we had finished most everything, but we just needed to mix them, so we did remote mixes. But then the other projects, another one that Lindsay and I were working on, and a couple others, they're all shut down indefinitely. Oh, wow. And we get updates on, and we haven't had a recent update, but we have speculative dates, which are more like August, September, October, because we have Lindsay and I work on one show that would film here in LA, but then others are up in Vancouver, or other parts of the world. So nobody has said anything definitive, so we don't know. And in terms of all the systemic racism and flipping to that side, I think it's I personally have always I got to work on a show where we always use women, which was great. We only use women artists, and I think a really colorful template is always the best for anything, any motto. So I always try, I can definitely do better, and I'm vowing to do better. But thankfully, I think there's so much to be gained by a colorful template of, everything. So I'm all for it, and let's keep, and I'm so happy the conversation's happening, and let's push it forward, and all of us
I also know Anton, the Capitol has been doing a lot around this conversation, specifically when it comes to their hiring practices and being able to hire specifically Black talent. Can you talk to us about, sort of in your role as the VP of A&R and Soundtracks, how you're able to champion diversity at Capitol Records?
Absolutely. I think I feel very lucky to work at a company that has put this at the forefront of its sort of corporate mission, if you like, is to have a real conversation and have real policies about inclusion and diversity. And I just feel I feel everybody's going through sort of this big, and forgive me, as an Australian, I come to this from probably with an outsider's perspective, and going, this is a moment that's well long overdue. And I think, as confronting as it is for everybody involved in the conversation, I think it's awesome that there are companies like the one I work for, and Capitol's owned by Universal Music Group. Universal Music Group is being incredibly proactive, and in fact, not just Universal, all of the major music groups are being proactive in breaking open this conversation and giving voice to the change that has to happen. And so I feel it's a big part of our world at the moment. And by our world, I mean our work world. This conversation is happening, and it's happening under the very real sort of pressure of actually creating meaningful change. And that's a great place to be. As confronting as it is, it's a great place to be, because I think we can help other people across other companies and right across society to have the language and have the tools to have these conversations.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think for our audience out there who are currently watching, like, this is something that is transforming specifically the industry now, and all the major labels, or majority of the major labels, and a lot of the different music companies are getting behind it. And so it's really time to begin to advocate for themselves and make sure that they're prepared to be able to enter the workforce, but also to advocate for what they need, and advocate for a diverse space. And I think it's really important. We have come up on, it's now 3:01, and I've been known to go over, so I'm trying to get better at that. This was an amazing conversation. I'm so happy to have had it with you all. Ashe, I don't know if you want to plug your song that you just released yesterday real quick for the audience.
Plug it. Yeah. Yesterday I had a record come out of, and I think it has to do with this conversation that we're having, because it wouldn't be happening if my song wasn't put in to All the Boys I Love. P.S. I Still Love You. So moral of the story, I put out a version yesterday featuring Niall Horan, which I'm extremely, extremely excited about. And I'm just overall, just like from the bottom of my heart, so grateful to you guys for believing in the record and believing in me. And artists, so many people get their shot because of a stink. And I know Lizzo's song is a great example of that. Yeah. In another Netflix movie, ironically. And she won a Grammy the next year or something like that. So it's like, I love you guys, and I'm so grateful to you, and I'm just freaking excited for the world too. I'm like, viva la, resistance, the revolution happening right now, and we're a part of it. And I just keep saying, like, we're not here to be right, we're here to get it right. Yeah.
Yes. Wait, have you been listening to Brene Brown?
Oh, I'm listening to Brene Brown.
That one. Yeah.
All day. Yes, highly recommend her podcast with Ibram X Kendi, and I think Austin. What was that one from?
Austin Channing Brown. That was
Austin Channing Brown. Yeah. Educating ourselves. Like, if you are not educating yourself right now on what's happening in the world, you are missing the mark. Yeah. Be a part of the change. So, wow. Yeah, I'm so excited.
Yeah, and again, thank you all so much for being here. As you know, Music Forward, our goal and our mission is to diversify the music industry and provide programming for those who for us to open up equity and access to the music industry and other opportunities. So for you all being on this call and being a part of this conversation, you're already sort of just starting it and sharing this insight and helping us open the doors to these different pockets of the industry. With that said, I'm going to let you all go. Oh, before I go, I want to give a special shout out to Stephanie, who actually helped us put this together, and it was very instrumental in us having a tech rehearsal and all of that. So thank you to Stephanie. A special shout out to her. And you all enjoy your weekends. Happy Juneteenth Eve. And I will see you all soon when the world opens up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.